it needs to be said. The staff, the animators, everyone working on this project just needs a pat on the back, a pay raise, and just needs to be praised. Because what this episode of Spy Family did is something that went above and beyond what normal anime does. And I talked about this briefly in previous episode reviews, but once again, what I talked about appears again in this week's episode that aired today. And what I'm talking about, if you are completely unaware, is the fact that Spy Family has been getting a lot of anime original scenes, and that is not a bad thing. They have been expanding upon content that felt missing in the original source, and it makes me so happy. Like, it really makes me unbelievably happy to just see a series given so much love and attention to detail in its anime production. Because, have you ever read a series, like any series, and you're like, this type of content here could be expanded upon in an anime. Like, they could potentially make an entire filler arc on just this content alone, and it would be amazing. Like, I feel like many people that have probably read manga, and have had a favorite series, have probably gotten to a certain point in a story, and like, you could expand upon this and make an entire arc focused on that. It would be crazy. And that's kind of what's happening with Spy Family. Like, the animators, the people on the team, the director, everyone is really bringing Spy Family to life, adding so much more to it that I feel like the author of Spy Family probably never dreamed would actually be shown. Like, for instance, just the content we got with this episode. And what I mean by that is like, the entire ending sequence, like the running segment of Loid Man, and how he's trying to get to Anya, that entire segment was just not really there in the manga. Everything was expanded upon in this episode, because in the manga it was very quick, it was straight to the point, it was just going to the castle, it was more funniness, and then it was just straight up saving Anya. That was it. And obviously that's what this episode was, but there was a lot of content that just wasn't in the manga chapter, and you can go back and look at yourself around Chapter 5, Chapter 6, somewhere around in there, and you will see that just, like, when you look at the chapter, and when you look at this episode, the amount of content that expands upon that chapter is absolutely ridiculous, and I'm so happy about that. Like, this really is above and beyond the manga. And I don't mean that in any form of disrespect towards the author of Spy Family, because without Spy Family's manga, we wouldn't have this anime. And obviously, when it comes to writing manga, there's a lot of difficulties, a lot of things you have to do to be able to kind of put the content within a panel manga format. So, it makes sense why some things have to be cut. And I'm happy to see the liberties that are being taken with Spy Family, especially this episode, and how well done and executed they have been, because I feel like everyone that is sitting down and watching Spy Family is just getting that nostalgic feeling of like 90s to early 2000s era cartoons while they're watching this series. Like, I cannot be the only one that felt that. And what I mean is, like, when you see the entire segment where Anya gets taken away and you have, the main mastermind villain, he's like, I got Princess Anya, come get me, Loid Man, and he's mocking him, his overall attire, the way he gestures towards Loid Man, everything about the segment where, Loid is having to chase after Anya, it just reminds you of, like, one of those gimmicky villains, like those villains that, obviously are evil, but they aren't someone that is, like, just straight up, like, super, super evil. Like, you know how, like, cartoon villains are. Like, cartoon villains, like, yes, they can be evil, but, they have that quirky nature about them to where you could just sit back and laugh because of the over dramatic, like, nature of the character. And that's kind of what I got from this episode, and I love it. I love how it really was like a TV show within a TV show, because Loid was acting out a TV show, trying to make Anya happy that, her father was, acting like Bond Man. It's just a beautiful episode. It's really fun, and I just like how everything was incorporated in this episode and gave me that really good vibe, because you knew for a fact while watching the episode, Anya was not in any danger. And I feel like that's another good thing about, like, classic cartoons, is if you go back and watch a classic cartoon, you'll know that, like, the character, if they're stolen or taken, they're not really in any major danger. It seems like they are, but they're not, and that's kind of the impression you get while watching this. Like, you have all the henchmen just shooting, like, balloons, pretty much, or water guns, or whatever, at Loid throughout the episode, and it just demonstrates it isn't a real threat. It's just more of fun and all that, and it gives that, that air around it, like, yes, this is serious, but not really serious, and it's something that kids could definitely sit down and actually watch, that entire immersive factor. And I just feel like this was a good homage, honestly, in its own way, to, like I said, classic cartoons. I really appreciate that. I love the vibe it gave me, because I remember waking up every morning on Saturday or Sunday, every single weekend, and just tuning in to, like, maybe Cartoon Network, maybe Nintendo, maybe Boomerang, whatever, and just watching some good old cartoons. And that's exactly what I got, and I appreciate this episode. Now, with that out of the way, though, there is a few things I do want to talk about when it comes to Loid's character and kind of what he did for the whole operation. So, we know for a fact that this episode is definitely hilarious, and it's more of just like, having Anya have a good time. But there's obviously multi-layers to this episode that definitely needs to be dived into. And that is the fact that all of the agents pretty much a part of, this spy operation were called in to help out Twilight, aka Loid. And they're all getting to see Twilight / Loid on the field probably for the first time, getting to see the #1 spy really working his magic, doing what he needs to do. And in its own way, when you look at this entire operation that this episode was, Loid was training them. He was training them that anything could happen. The bizarre, the strange, and even something like this, ridiculous like this, of going to a castle and saving a princess, could potentially happen for their spy career. That it could be necessary for them going forward. But obviously, with Loid demonstrating himself and kind of, attacking, his fellow spies to be able to get to Anya, it was more of a training segment for them. Allow them to learn from the best, and I think there's a lot to really take away from this. It's kind of like a military instructor. Like, a military instructor is instructing everybody else, they're having a private battle session or whatever. That's what I got from this, is that Loid was training, the new recruits, or training people that, maybe need a lesson in something like this. It's a good segment as well. That's what you can also take away. So it isn't something that you can throw away and say, oh, only Anya got something out of this. Everyone else a part of, like, the spy operations, got something out of, what Loid actually did in this episode. Now, a few other things that does need to be talked about is Yor and her role in this episode, which is interesting because Yor really didn't have a lot of moments in this week's episode of Spy Family, but with the moments she did have, they were definitely outstanding and stood out, especially that final segment where Yor appears and she is there kind of fighting for, the bad guy and trying to stop from, Princess Anya getting taken by Loid, and she's obviously in a very drunken state. Just the way she acts and everything, it's clear as day, and her overall movement is so fluid. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially when she goes in to actually hit Loid, and Loid takes an actual hit. Like, you see a scratch on his face, he starts to bleed a little bit, which kind of emphasizes the nature that Yor really isn't holding back, which that's the scary part, because we all know Yor is an assassin. She is pretty much a hitman. And because of that, she could definitely end someone instantly. She's strong. And we have seen her strength. It is insane. And so, when she is fighting Loid, it brings up an interesting topic. Could Loid actually beat Yor? Now, obviously, in terms of knowledge, maybe, I guess sabotaging stuff or whatever, Loid would definitely win. But if it was a straight-up fight between Loid and Yor, and there was, like, no holding back, etc., and there was no one to really stop them, it brings to question who would win. And I'm inclined, honestly, to believe that Yor would win because of just her overall power, her strength, and you could laugh or whatever, but I truly believe if things would have continued, and she didn't, let's say, pass out drunk in the episode, she probably would have beat the crap out of Loid. And that would have been interesting to see where that was going to go if that indeed happened. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is I like how Yor, she is so powerful, and it makes you wonder if she will ever turn against Loid. Like, if something like that could ever happen in the story, where Yor turns against Loid for some reason and has to take him down. Now, judging by the way the story is structured, I doubt that's going to happen, but it does not change the fact, though, that it makes you wonder. A what-if scenario, pretty much. And I would love to see debate and topic in the comments about that. I'm curious what you guys think. Like, who do you think would win, honestly? Like, no holding back. Who do you think would come on top between Yor and Loid? Let me know in the comments below on that one. But overall, it's a cute episode, and it's warm and fuzzy pretty much. That's exactly what this episode is. It's a great way to just have a good Saturday. I love Spy Family. And so I think it's a good time to wrap up the video here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. It does help me out a lot. Hit that bell icon down below and leave a like on the video as well if you had any form of entertainment. But with that, guys, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.